A mountain burn rises in Ben Louis in the ancient territory of Alba. It flows by Strathfillan and the Falls of Dochart into a loch through Killin to Kenmore. From there the River Tay rolls on to Perth and Dundee, where it meets the sea. Named for a prehistoric river goddess, Tatha, the Silent One, her hidden riches and mighty power have coursed through history, connecting human lives and communities from the Tay to the Ganges. Pearl and salmon, mills and ships, empires, warriors and industrialists, the annals of Tayside have been dominated by men of power. But delve below Tatha's silent surface into the deep current of women who struggled and sang and worked and rebelled as tradition bearers and history makers. Capeth is as good a place as any to enter their story. Stone circles, Pictish forts and Roman camps tell of long human habitation. Imperial Rome was captivated by pearls as symbols of great wealth and power. Control of the pearl trade was a key strategy and one reason for the conquest of Britain. Tatha's rich stocks of freshwater mussels drew the Roman invaders who settled along her banks, and those rare pearls were still valued into the 20th century.
I was born in a bow tent on the 18th of July 1906, on the banks of the River Tay, no far frae Dunkeld, and I was registered in the parish of Capeth. My father Dan was pearl fishing at Tay, and he got a braw pearl that day. Mind you, I was the first lassie born to him, so he used to aye say to my mother, well, how could one man be so lucky? I got 2 pearls in one day.
Belle MacGregor was Dan's second pearl. Born into a traveller family, a singer and teller of tales, a queen among the heather, Belle's long life bore powerful witness to the traditions, hardships and pleasures of her community. Father Dan sold the Braw Pearl for a £5, but the money was stolen in a drunken brawl. Within months he was dead. Belle's mother struggled to survive with her children. They made baskets and heather brooms at night, went hawking up the glens during the day, continued at the pearl fishing. In Ireland, Belle met and married talented piper Alex Stewart. As their own children grew, they went summer busking in the Highlands. They had a base in Blairgowrie, where folk came from all over Scotland each year to pick berries. Ceilidhs were a way of life for the Stewarts. Belle's granddaughter recalled,
Listening to her sing with her sweet voice was love to my ears, because every song was a story.
And the most famous of her songs was The Berry Fields of Blair. In the 1950s, folk song collector Hamish Henderson discovered and recorded the Stewart family. Now the traditions which had simply flowed through everyday traveller routines and customs shifted course into the mainstream of the folk revival and brought international acclaim. Belle's cognac welled up from the adversities and joys of her life and community. She was a generous, dignified matriarch, both slighted by the world and queen of it. Did she ever cross paths with Miss Georgina Ballantine of Capeth? During the Great War, Georgina worked as a nurse in Perth, London and France, where she was decorated by the Red Cross. In later years, she was a registrar in the parish of Capeth and director of a minstrel troupe which provided entertainment for local Women's Rural Institute groups and events. Held in affection and esteem by her community, Georgina was typical of unnumbered, unremarked women of that generation. And she would have remained unknown but for an extraordinary talent nurtured on the Glendelvin beat of the Tay, where her father was gillie for the local laird. For Georgina was an angler, and on October the 7th, 1922, She landed the largest ever salmon caught with rod and line from a British river. It was an epic struggle following a successful day's fishing. 3 enormous silver darlings already lay in the boat when she finally hooked the 64-pound Leviathan. For over 2 hours, Georgina and her father played the fish, pursuing it downstream for half a mile.
I remarked that if I successfully grasped this fish, he must give me a new frock. Get ye the fish landed first and syne we'll see about the frock, was the reply.
In gathering darkness, persistence paid off. She wound in the giant at 8:20 p.m. and returned home for a toddy. Next day, the Perth Advertiser carried the tale of Capeth Lady's Tussle. A plaster cast of the fish was made before patients and staff at Perth Royal Infirmary tucked into fresh salmon for dinner. Her fame spread far and wide, though she never left Capeth. At her funeral in 1970, the minister said,
"For many years to come, there will be those who turn to their children and say, 'I knew Miss Ballantine who caught the record salmon. She was a truly wonderful person.'"
While Georgina was tussling with her salmon, the working women of Dundee had more basic struggles. The mills of Jutopolis employed 3 women for every man, and the lassies had a raucous reputation for wildness. Periodically, there would be spontaneous pay strikes when they took over city streets with singing and jingo ring games, while their men at home were mocked as kettle bilers. But in truth, most of the domestic burden fell on women and girls. They were double shifters, contending with post-war depression, grim housing and abject poverty. The city's working folk despised Winston Churchill, the arrogant absentee MP who had insulted them and opposed women's suffrage. At the 1922 general election, they sensationally dumped him in favour of a socialist prohibitionist. Mill worker Mary Soutar was already a veteran radical who organised campaigns for unemployment benefit and took part in riotous demonstrations against rent evictions. In 1924, she married Ernest Brooksbank. Their first home was in Foundry Lane, which frequently flooded when the Tay was in spate. The dockers' wives looked out for ships coming up the river, bringing work for their menfolk.
"There's a juter and a battener sailing up the Tay, and all the wives in Foundry Lane are singing blithe the day. There'll be pennies for the bairnies, a pint for Jock and Tam, money for the picters, the old folk get a dram."
Mary joined the Communist Party and in 1931 led opposition to introduction of the means test. At a mass demonstration, she was arrested and imprisoned on a charge of rioting. This was her 3rd spell in prison, and she took up writing poetry. On release, she formed the Dundee Working Women's Guild.
"We got things done. We got better treatment for old people and inhabitants of the poorhouses."
The Guild picketed and rang bells to warn women of approaching means test investigators. They took the lead in socialist community-based politics, which did not go down well with the male class warriors of the Communist Party. And when Mary criticised Stalin,
"the cook who brewed a sorry stink,"
she was expelled from the party. Mary Brooksbank played violin and sang the ballads of her native land. In later life, she wrote powerful poetry and songs about women's working lives, social justice, and the joys of nature. Words from her famous jute mill song are engraved on the Canongate wall of the Scottish Parliament. Of 25 quotations, the only one by a woman. But in this ill-divided world, the rare pearls of Tayside will not be silenced. Listen to Belle and Georgina and Mary and all the bold lassies. Listen for their voices and wisdom, their stories and songs in the ebb and flow.
We sat till the setting sun made a golden path across our own bonny river, the Tay. You threw out your hand. Look at it, Mary. Whar's the beatings o' it?
Belle MacGregor Stewart, 1907 to 1997. Georgina Ballantine, 1889 to 1970. Mary Soutar Brooksbank, 1897 to 1978.